Today's guest is someone that I've genuinely loved spending time with. Myles is a speech coach, but that label barely scratches the surface. He works with people operating at the very top of their game, including creators like Chris Williamson, whose voice is now recognized by millions around the world. And what's interesting about this is that level of presence doesn't come from vocal tricks. It comes from a mindset and a status, how you see yourself in the room long before you speak. And that's where Myles actually does his best work. He goes deep into the psychology behind confidence, presence, and why so many capable people unknowingly undermine their own delivery. In this conversation, we get into the craft of speaking, the inner game behind it, and what actually moves the needle when it comes to how your voice lands. So if you care about how you show up, either on stage, in meetings, under pressure, this one really matters. Let's get into it. Myles, it's lovely to see you again. How are you?
I'm very well. Great pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Myles, you have to be one of the most well-spoken individuals that I've ever worked with.
You are far too kind.
Talk to me about your journey with communication.
What a great opening question. My journey with communication. So really, I'll take us back to my school days, because I was a very shy schoolboy, super shy. Wouldn't dare draw attention to myself. I would just sort of want to disappear almost. I didn't want any focus on me. And I think I was at middle school, so I would have been about 9, 10, 11. And there was a parents' evening, and my tutor mentioned to my parents, we sometimes forget that Myles is in the room.
Wow.
Now, if my objective is to disappear, that piece of feedback would be great in one sense. Yeah. But of course it wasn't, because that's a horrendous thing to hear. And it really kicked me like a donkey punch to the stomach. It really, really hurt. And I thought, gosh, this is not the way to march through life. This isn't a workable strategy to deal with things. So, and my parents were incredibly supportive, and they would always push me to do things outside of my comfort zone. So I was part of a number of organisations, like Boys Brigade and marching bands and that sort of thing. And just slowly through that, organically, my confidence just slowly started to build. Mm-hmm. And I would not feel so pressured to put my hand up to answer a question or to put my point of view forward in a very sort of subtle, would you mind awfully sort of thing, nothing to ruffle the feathers rather. So that was my hinge moment actually to do something working in the world of voice and speechcraft and public speaking. And to cut a very long story short, I went to university and I studied musical theatre as a degree. Not with any intention of being the next, best thing on the West End. Yeah. I never thought I was that great. But I thought perhaps teaching is a nice place to go into. Uh-huh. And my journey into university was really the sort of scholarly aspect. I thought I love theatre. I'm a bit of an old soul. My brother's 10 years older than me, so I'm very much the youngest. And my parents were always slightly older than my friends' parents. I'm sure they won't mind me saying that. So the references that were fizzing around the household were from a slightly different era. Mm-hmm. And my father was really into classic movies and theatre, as my mother was as well. And they would then impart this onto me, or I would just absorb it naturally. Yeah. I would react to it in the day, go, oh, please turn that off, or stop singing, or shut up. But I would actually think, there's something good here. And watching classic cinema with my father just opened up this avenue into different way people speak from different eras, different time periods, different styles, different acting styles. And when I went to university, I thought, yes, I want to do this, just to study something that I enjoy. Yeah. because really on paper it's a pretty Mickey Mouse degree in that particular sense.
Yeah.
It's not going to help you really march on. But ironically it did with me.
Yeah.
And I fell into teaching after that, and I wound up teaching in a secondary school, not a particularly great secondary school.
Mm-hmm.
And I went in really sort of bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and thought,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to inspire young minds, I'm going to be the new Mr. Chipping or Miss Jean Brodie, that
Yeah.
sort of thing. And unfortunately, the team that I had around me weren't particularly supported. They were pretty well weathered, I think, because of it wasn't a particularly great school. I don't think it really exists now anyway.
Yeah.
And I was halfway through a class once and I thought, what am I doing here? I'm not really, all I'm teaching is manners.
Yeah.
I'm not really teaching anything of significant substance. So I just left and I fell into unemployment for the first time in my life. And I'm a village boy, so
Yeah.
obviously I wanted to go to London and all the bright lights and things. And I just researched creative companies, and it was as loose as that. So it
Mhm.
could be a magazine, marketing, ad agency. And I wound up interning at this ad agency. And then that then turned into a job, and then I was there for a number of years and worked in marketing for about 10 years as a result. But in that first position, one of the account execs, the younger members of the team, came up to me in my first couple of weeks and said, "Oh, Myles, I see you studied theatre. Can I bounce my pitch deck slides off you? I've got a meeting with Samsung tomorrow for so many millions pounds worth of business." And I said, yes, of course. So we hired a meeting room, and, I thought it'd just be like a half an hour, but it turned into a 2-hour workshop.
Yeah.
And that's when that sort of light bulb moment clicked. And I thought, there might be something in this, teaching and coaching in a slightly different sector, which chimes with what I have learnt through study, but also going right back to that 9-year-old schoolboy. Those sort of hinge moments in life are hinge moments before we even realise what they are. My vision point, if you like, was at school, but I didn't realise it until fairly recently, actually. I've been doing lots of reflection over the past 12 months. It's been a real big push for me and the business. And so to answer your question, it probably goes all the way back to school, via university, and then just taking a risk and stepping into unemployment, and then just gliding on that journey from there.
How easy is it for you to recall that moment at school in the parents' evening? Because that feels significant in terms of the getting you to where you currently are, but a very small moment in time. Did you do some work on yourself to find that moment, or was it? Talk to me about that.
I did, actually, and a contact of a client that I had mentioned this note saying, "What's your vision? Why are you doing what you're doing?" It's not just I'm doing it because of.
Yeah.
It's usually something deeper than that. And it took me a while to get into it. And I sat there and I thought, gosh, it was then. And it was, I want to help people find their own voice. And that, as cliche as that sounds, it is really that. And to enhance what's there as opposed to changing what it is. And that's mixed in with a number of things, confidence, status, and everything. So it's tricky to go back to that point, because I can really recall how I would feel in classrooms and doing games and that sort of thing. It's a very sporty school. I went to 2 quite sporty schools. Not being a particularly proficient sportsman, you just have to do it. You know, and there's no two ways about it. And I suppose, ironically, in that sense, that's probably really helped with the sense of just resilience and getting on with it. And again, with great support at home, to find a voice and go, it's okay, you can. I remember my mother saying, so I used to say to her, look, please don't mention to anybody that I like classic films. Because I didn't realise there were classic films when I first started watching them. They were just stories, and they were good stories, and I watched them with my father. And I think, this is really good. But then to show that to one of your peer group at school, it's what the hell is this rubbish sort of thing. So I'd very much want to keep it secret in that sense. And my mother always used to say, it doesn't matter, you like what you like. You like what you like.
Yeah.
Don't worry about bending to what everybody else is doing.
Yeah.
If you like it, and you stick up for it.
Yeah.
And she was quite right. She always is. She was quite
Yeah.
right. And yeah, it is tricky to go back to it. But I think those points of reflection, be them so painful, they do bear thinking about. Like nostalgia is the pain of yesterday. So it is that idea. And I think with that, I think I am quite nostalgic as a person just within my upbringing, I think, with that. So it is tricky.
It is,
tricky.
yeah. And sometimes you wonder how accurate our recall is around stuff like that, right? Doesn't mean to say it's right or wrong, but you can sometimes recall things in certain ways and then create something around that which is positive and projects you into a certain space or otherwise, right?
Yeah, quite right. And I think sometimes we bury stuff so deeply, you do forget about it, or you recall the vagueness around it, the vapours of a memory, as opposed to the actual core memory itself and how that made you feel.
Yeah.
That very sort of innate, visceral feeling.
Yeah.
And I remember feeling absolutely terrified. You know, oh my word, someone's going to ask me a question. I've got to answer a question in front of people.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if they do it so much at school now, but when you would have a class reader and you'd be reading your book and your teacher would say, okay, Myles, take over. And you then read your 3 pages of Great Expectations or something. And you would just sense your voice shaking, or you're very much speaking to yourself. And again, it would have been within that era where the note of, sorry, I can't hear a word you're saying, speak up, would be the piece of feedback. And again, there is nothing worse than hearing that. I'm not sure if you've ever experienced that note's coming back at you and you think, oh my word. And you feel awkward repeating yourself. You feel yourself going red. You just want to disappear. And if they don't hear you again, what do you do? Do you just close down? Do you come to like a bit of a dead end? What happens?
Yeah.
So those points, as painful as they are, do bear thinking about. But you're quite right. Sometimes we do forget every little detail. But I think if you remember the feeling, then you're halfway there.
Yeah, absolutely.
If not all the way there sometimes.
Yeah. And now you help a wide range of individuals, Myles. I remember when we first met, I asked you, who is your typical client? And, you know, you couldn't really pinpoint it, but there must be a common thread that runs throughout the people that you work with. Could you explain around that a little bit?
I can, yes, of course. So in the early days, it was people who were just terrified, excuse me, of speaking in front of people. And I think in the main, that's still very much a thing. But now people have really cottoned on that these days you just have to be a good public speaker. And there's no two ways about it. I think modern life or modern working life has insisted that you can speak in front of a room. And that could be presenting something back to your team at work. That could be chairing a meeting, going to an interview, or people starting out on podcasts, for example, or I'm doing a keynote and I want it to be brilliant. Lots of people I work with don't like it to be known that they work with a speech coach, and that's completely fine. So the typical person now, if I think back over the past probably 2 years, is very much, I want to be a better communicator or storyteller.
Okay.
And it's really, I love it when somebody says that they want to be a better storyteller, because you think, yeah, great.
Yeah.
They've understood that it's not just, I want to be better at work presenting this idea to the room.
Yeah.
I want to be better telling stories and telegraphing my feelings and stories to the world. And as I always say with clients early on, we're not going to do, this is your social voice, this is your corporate voice, this is your one-to-one voice, this is your group voice. It's always you, but there just might be an increased sense of vocal efforts depending on the size of the room, for example. And again, that really pinpoints this idea of speaking with a sense of authenticity and presence.
Mm-hmm.
So that this authenticity line is very prominent with people I'm speaking to on a
Yeah.
discovery call, for example.
But when you speak about fear as well, how does that still play a role, do you think, in the clients that you work with, and how does that show up, and why do you think it shows up?
Yeah, so fear, we work on this a lot actually, and it's that sense of, so when you stand up in front of people to talk, it's very exposing, hugely vulnerable, it's massively, oh my word, gosh, here we are. And the first thing people think of is the audience is judging me as the entity of Dave, for example.
Yeah.
And I always try and say, look, people haven't got time to judge you as the entity of just you. They are there to listen to what you're going to say. So you've got to take the attention off yourself and put it into the story that you're telling, to really think about why you're there and why you're speaking. Because it's not just an exercise of standing up in front of people, saying your name and your address and sitting down. There is a reason behind it. So it's quite a topsy-turvy way of looking at things, but I mean, most people hate themselves. They haven't got time to judge you as the entity. So it's that idea of thinking, look, no one's got time for this. They want to hear what you've got to say. Now, if your strategy to tell your story is through the guise of people are judging me, then your story is always going to play second fiddle. So that's when you get the, hi, everybody, it's really great to be here. So today, and the motivation is to sit down as quickly as possible, which then warrants the whole exercise pointless. So it takes a time to work up to this point of going, okay, right, so why are you delivering this today? What's going on? Oh, I'm doing this because my boss told me. And you go, okay, that's great, but I don't care about that, and nor do you really. There's got to be something greater in there. And sometimes it takes a lot of digging to get into that point to find that motivational angle of why you're doing it. Because it could be a very drab, dry subject, but there's always a story somewhere. Otherwise, you wouldn't be asked to speak about it, one would hope anyway. So fear still plays a part, and how can we handle that? What strategies can we look at to flip this thing on its head and put a different hat on it, just so it's a much more human interaction as opposed to an abstract endeavour.
Yeah. And how would you suggest that people look at working with that fear with regards to speaking in front of people? Because it is still, I believe, ranked as one of the number one fears that people suffer from, right?
Exactly right. Yeah, it's spiders, heights, public speaking, more than death. Those three things.
It's completely irrational in many ways. So removing that fear is, or I guess the first point is, having that fear is holding a lot of people back from telling their story. But we know now in the modern world, obviously storytelling is part of what people need to get on and succeed, right?
Yeah, of course. And we all know this, really. We all love and react to stories. Humans relate to humans, and we know what stories are, and we know how they move us because we were read to as a child, we were read to ourselves as a child, we read to ourselves now, we enjoy watching certain films, we enjoy listening to certain types of music. Normally the music that moves you the most is the music that speaks to you the most, and that could be musically, lyrically, or the two combined. And there's usually a good story behind a good song. And I've sometimes done the exercise where you remove the music and just have the lyrics of a song, and we'll perhaps read that as a monologue. And we'll look at that and go, okay, this is interesting. So what's actually going on here? So the fear aspect and the nerves aspect, we sometimes can't eradicate, but we can look at it in a slightly different way.
Yeah.
We can change it into a sense of anticipation and excitement.
Yeah.
Oh my word, I've got a great story to tell you. I cannot wait for you to hear this. I wish I was sitting in the audience listening to me right now. That sense, that's what I like to build to. But depending on where you are in your career, in your public speaking journey, it's tricky to work out how you get from A to B. But simply, if I was to boil it down to a real simple level, get the reps in.
Yeah.
Just do it all the time. Put your hand up. Stand in front of people. Read out loud as you walk around the house. When you're in the shower, speak the lyrics of your favourite song.
Yeah.
Get these reps going, understand that rhythm. Because the nervous person, and when I first started the consultancy, I worked with a lot of people working on their wedding speeches.
Okay.
Now, these are people who are usually never speak in front of a room, and this is a very big deal. The stakes never higher when one's doing their wedding speech, and quite rightly so. It's the biggest speech you're ever going to make.
Yeah.
And they would always do the strategy of just reading through the speech in their head. They'll write it down, reams of A4 paper, and just speak it through in their heads. So the first time they deliver it properly, in front of a room of their nearest and dearest, it doesn't quite hit the mark that they think it's hitting in their heads when they read it. Because we all sound like Churchill in our heads when we're reading. You know, we all sound like the greatest orator known to man up here. But when we come to actually deliver, we don't always quite hit that mark.
Do you ever get that feeling, Myles, as someone who's kind of crafted this now to the point where you have mastered your trade in many ways? Do you ever get to that point where you think, I should have said that? Or I wish I'd have said that?
Oh, gosh, yeah. Yeah, often. I always say to a client, I say, if you ever do a speaking engagement and it went fantastically well and it could not be improved and you thought there was nothing there that you could add on to make it better or more effective, write it on a postcard and let me know, because I have seldom felt that feeling. Felt that feeling. We get to the end and you think, oh, I forgot that bit. Oh, we'll miss that bit there. Or I wish I'd said that there. I think there's always going to be that sense of longing for something else you could have said in a much more effective way. And sometimes that's just the way it goes, but it's never mission accomplished with this stuff. And quite rightly so, I think, because that's what keeps us marching on and getting used to speaking in front of people and really honing in our own speaking style and our own performative skills, if you like. It's that sense of, you might be somebody at work who always works with a PowerPoint deck, 15 slides full of text. That's how you begin. Now, as you go through your journey, perhaps working with me or just organically, you might find that limiting those slides or removing the text first and foremost and just having images, realign and bring the focus back to you. I was working with a client the other day who was doing a weekend event with his company over in America. And he was doing the opening keynote and the closing remarks on the Sunday, the end of the weekend. Yeah. And we've been working together for a while. He said, I've got 40 minutes. I said, great, we are not using any slides.
What was his reaction?
Yeah, I could see the sort of fear of God in his eye. I said, look, I think we're at a point now where, A, I know you can do this, but B, I think you need to do it to advance your own experience on the stage, speaking in front of his audience. And we just reviewed it earlier in the week, and he absolutely aced it. And it was amazing to watch, because I said, look, just take this snapshot now and let's look back to when we first started working together. And we brought up some old footage because I would have recorded that first session with him. And the gulf of difference was so apparent. Yeah. Still places for us to go, but that gulf is so vast. And it's great to see, to unshackle yourselves from the script and the slides and just give me the speaker.
Yeah.
I mean, that is massively exposing because you've got nowhere to hide almost. But as an audience member, it's really, really effective to see the speaker just standing there speaking to the room about their own experience, their own story, without going, and on slide 4, let's look at paragraph 3 and chart 7. One, it splits my focus in the audience, and I only get, and me as a speaker, I only get half of an ear. I want the full attention. If I want to be an engaging speaker, then I want the focus on me. Yeah. And I'm going to work on it so I do get the focus. And I'm going to make the audience work as well, and not make them just sort of, kick back or get their phone out or read a magazine or something. Focus on me. I'm here for a reason. I want you to listen to this. So again, with a shy person who would never put their hand up to do a public speaking engagement, I would say that person probably struggles to make eye contact socially as well. So there's a sort of disconnect that happens there. So yeah, I completely have those feelings where I think, oh, I wish I'd said that, wish I'd done that. And I'm glad I do, actually, because it gives you another sense to go, right, next time I'm going to have a bash at this or add that element in. I think I could say this in a much more concise way. Yeah. It's a really, really, it's a wonderful field to work in.
You said the word earlier, authenticity. Would you suggest that that example of your client who's gone from slide deck to full vulnerability exposure without any content, is that a journey to be more authentic, would you suggest?
Massively so, because you have to be present as that person. If you don't have a slide to hide behind, you've got to be present, you've got to turn up, you've got to have arrived on the day.
Yeah.
And when you get to that point and you start to think about how you're reacting to your own story, that's when this sense of you is really exposed and comes out. The sense of shyness that sometimes we feel is when we're at our rawest sense. So it's a point of exploration to go, okay, right, so you're here. Let's remove the slides and everything. It's just you on stage. And I've done exercises where we'll go into the theatre or the space and it's just me and the client.
Yeah.
And I'll just get them to stand on the space. I'll say, look, this is your home screen. This is your safe spot here. Everyone can see you here. Just stand there. I'm going to go to the back of the theatre or the room. Just stand there for 3 minutes. I'm not going to say anything, but just stand there and just be.
Yeah.
And embrace that sense of neutrality. Because when we're neutral, we are, in essence, ourselves, and then, in essence, our authentic self.
Mm-hmm.
So it bears a lot of discussion, this sense of authenticity, because it's a bit of a buzzword at the moment, I would say. And I'm pleased it's being bandied around, but it still bears some discussion and some exploration to what it is.
Quite deep, isn't it?
It's hugely deep, yeah. And my early access to that point with the client is usually, would you say that line to me if you and I were going for a coffee?
That was going to be one line of my conversation with you today, Myles, is how do you grow as a speaker and remain authentic to yourself? Because there has to be a tension point there. So I'm going to do a presentation or a public speak. It might be a wedding speech or something different. I want to upgrade my performance to a degree, but at the same time, I'm being told I need to be my authentic self, but that's maybe stuck in a old identity somewhere which I'm trying to transcend. So how do you bridge that gap between the two?
To give a very frustrating answer, it is rehearsal and prep.
Yeah.
Just airing it. Again, getting those reps in. The more you do it and the more you inhabit what you're doing through exercise and strategy and technique with me, you'll automatically start to step into a new realm. So again, not changing the way you speak, but enhancing what's already there. So in one sense, you've always got one foot in Dave, as it were, and then another foot in, I wonder if I try this idea here. Or I say to you, this sounds great. Why didn't we do the final line first and the first line last? Let's just try that on for size. That might sideswipe you to begin with because you haven't prepared for that. And you're thinking, gosh, I've got to think on my feet and be spontaneous. AKA, you and I speaking now.
Yeah.
We don't have our scripts. We're not following lines. I'm reacting to what you're saying and the reactions you're giving me and vice versa. And that is the pure quality of any good conversation. There's no such thing as acting, only reacting. So with that sense, putting that into rehearsal and prep and just exploring these feelings, I think, okay, yeah, that feels good. I'm not sure I would do that. And I might say, okay, that's fine. Just try another couple of times. And if we don't sense we're getting anywhere, we can just put that on ice or put that to bed and look at something else. It's similar in the sense, if you want to enhance the way you're speaking by increasing your vocabulary, for example.
Yeah.
Because you might think to drop in a long word that you might not use is inauthentic.
Yeah.
but we're all learning and growing and turning into slightly different versions of ourselves, slightly more enhanced ways of looking at things. And I would say, no, you're still being you. You're just exploring something new and different and wearing it in a slightly different way. And the more you wear that through getting the reps in, it just becomes part of your day-to-day. Like going to the gym and doing a different set or something, or a different exercise. That might not have been part of your routine 2 years ago, but it's still you acting and improving that sense of self through fitness. And again, getting those reps in and getting the familiarity and thinking, okay, yeah, this feels good. I could drop this word into a sentence tomorrow.
Yeah.
And that could be a piece of homework that I give to a client. I'll say, that's fine. Drop this into a conversation tomorrow and send me a voice note once you've done it.
Yeah.
And let me know how it was.
Love that.
And it's usually, I did it. Did anybody notice? No.
Yeah.
Okay. So what are we worrying about then? What are we worrying about? Just do it. And it's that sense of, people are going to think who I am. Who's this person?
It's that
Who
fear
do
of
they
judgment.
think they
It's that
are?
Fear of judgment again.
Yeah, exactly right. Which is very sort of unique to the British culture, I think.
Well, I think it's unique to the human race in many ways, isn't it?
Yeah, I think in that sense of, I have done well, I have improved. Oh, well done, slap on the back. Or the other person goes, oh, who the hell does he think he is? The tall poppy syndrome that Chris talks about quite often, because obviously he lives in America now. So it's an interesting endeavour. So yeah, there's no sort of straight answer to that question, apart from get the reps in and prep in a focused way and a direct way. And that will, in essence, keep this sense of authentic self. Yeah. And I think we've all understood this because modern life makes us pick out the inauthentic person. I think the days of the oily second-hand car salesman is sort of disappearing. Yeah, it's I'm sort of still skirting around in the margin somewhere, but they're not as prevalent as perhaps they once were. And I think that's because we are bombarded with videos and messages, not just through social media, but YouTube and whatever. There are so many access and streaming sites and things. We are bombarded on a daily basis. So we can sense, that person's trying to sell me something. And sometimes we see this when we watch our favourite podcasts and it's a really good conversation and they suddenly stop to talk about ExpressVPN. And you think, I'm not sure they're fully on board with this piece of advertising, but I'll let it go and then I'll jump back in. So it's a really interesting point.
It is,
authenticity and presence. I always marry those two together.
I think, I used to hear or see quite often people respond to me and think that I've changed or you've changed, Dave. And at first you might get triggered by that, but in actual fact, yes. There's an element of growth involved in that, and we are dynamic individuals anyway, so we're not fixed, are we? We're not objects.
No.
So it's being able to have the confidence to own even a change in how you speak or present yourself is not necessarily being inauthentic. It's just, as you say, trying things on for size and then doing it over and over and over again. And then before you know it, you've embodied this new identity and you have changed, but you're just a better version of what you were previously.
Exactly right. I take my mind back to that 9-year-old at school of me, and I go, okay, that person, I wouldn't say a damn thing, but now I'm saying things and I'm telling stories and I feel good about it. I'm unleashing what was bottled up a long time ago and just going, yeah, this is what I like, this is what I do, this is what I've done. If you don't like it, that's great. But if you do, fantastic. And I think, again, it leads to this sense of one's friendship group. The circle sometimes diminishes the older you get. Yeah. As you suddenly realise that others in your group aren't either as ambitious as you or as curious as you. And sometimes we do think, okay, I might need to just let that friendship, which appears to be slightly one-sided, might just let that drift so I can grow. And I think when we think, who does he think he is, we're usually playing it through the mind of one of our so-called friends or acquaintances. And I think there is a sense of fear stepping into that lonely arena as you organically, not cast off friends, but almost a sort of not engage so much.
Yeah.
And just think, actually, I'm going to flourish much greater here. When we're at school, everybody's our friend. The whole playground is our cohort. But the older we get, the friendship group, and it slims, and it's people that matter, and who you want to spend time with, and who you resonate with, and who react well to you as you to them. It's a good conversation. Tricky conversations, happy conversations. Fair weather friends don't never stay the course. So I think there are some parallels between those points of exposure and vulnerabilities and thinking about not growing within ourselves because of the friendship group that we've hung on to for a long time, and it's not really benefiting us in that sense, which is a tricky thing to process.
It is. It is. I saw this amazing piece of content which talks about that very point. It talks about some people are there for a season, and they're like boosters for a rocket. They will get you to a certain altitude, but like boosters for a rocket, they will eventually fall off. And it doesn't mean to say that they're bad people. No. Just means to say that they're probably not quite ready to get to the altitude that you're going to, right? Exactly.
It's that drains and radiators conversation. Is that, a real sort of cynical version of that much greater analogy. But it is that sense of, what do I get out of this? Am I getting anything, or am I just there when this person's feeling a bit rotten? Yeah. And if I'm feeling rotten, then they're nowhere to be seen. He was always there when he needed me, was the saying. So it's, and again, so Chris Williamson talks about this in his Lonely chapter. Speech. It's completely that. So, yeah.
And, you've worked with some amazing people. You mentioned Chris Williamson, one of your clients, right? Talk to me about how that came about, and obviously he's completely exploded now as a podcaster. But I've, following Chris's journey and being, I'm not going to say I'm a super fan, but having watched some of his early podcasts and listened to him maybe even 5 years ago to where he is now, there has been a noticeable change in how he presents. Talk to me about how you came across working with Chris and the results that you've seen there.
Yeah, so we started working together about 4.5 years ago when Chris was doing a TEDx talk in Newcastle.
Yeah.
So we worked together on just making that a solid performance. So this turned into a long-term working relationship as we sort of first initially looked at the speech and his delivery. That then turned into a mini curriculum after that to address some other points that we'd discovered. And then just various touch points through reviewing one of his podcasts, for example, with him, and then being part of his first London show, his very first London, his live show. He did a Northern Ireland and London tour, little mini tour. So I helped rehearse that with him and threw in the odd line here and there. And again, on show day, helping him warm up backstage, being on hand during the interval, giving notes at the end. And then that then grew into working on his next London show. So 12 months prior, it was a London show, 400 people in the audience. Jump forward 12 months, 3,500 people at the Apollo in London. So it was an amazing feat. It's a joy to see what he does. But again, he's a person who's always seeking to improve and to enhance what's there, going, okay, that was good, but what else do I need to look at? So that relationship started when his podcast was, pretty big then.
Yeah.
But not as stratospheric as it is now. And it's that sense of just keeping tabs on what he's doing and where he's going. And it's a thrill for me when I see him at a show in a tech rehearsal and he'll do one of my warm-ups.
And he's name dropped you a few times.
Yeah, he's very, very, very kind to do that, which is lovely when that happens. And it's just a joy to see him grow and really, really owning that particular space, because that is him.
Yeah.
That is him, and it takes a long time to get to that point.
Yeah.
But he's a person who has just done the thing, got the reps in all the time.
I want to talk to you a little bit. You mentioned warm up there, which is tactical, right? I want to talk to you a little bit about tactics, if that's all right, Myles, for a moment.
Yeah, of course.
In fact, the first thing I want to ask you is educate me on something, please.
Okay.
Pronunciation, articulation,
Yeah.
enunciation.
Yeah.
Can you describe them for me, the difference between them and why they're important?
So pronunciation is pronouncing the word correctly.
Yes.
So it's not H, it's H.
H.
It's
like this
Pacific Ocean, not specific ocean.
Yes.
Yeah, it's St.
classic.
Pancras, not St. Pancreas. Things like that. So it's as simple as that. Are you pronouncing the word correctly?
Okay.
Are you pronouncing it in the way it should be pronounced?
According to...
The dictionary is usually
Okay.
the best place to go to with stuff like that. Enunciation is, are you pronouncing it clearly?
Mm-hmm.
So can I hear what you're saying? So are you saying it right?
Mm-hmm.
Can I hear you?
Mm-hmm.
And the articulation is how you are articulating your thoughts
Yeah.
into the delivery. Are you being articulate?
Is there a coherence to how it comes out of your mouth?
Yeah, exactly right. So, and that's all under the big umbrella of diction, which, to boil it down further, is, can I hear what you're saying?
Yes.
So again, back to that point, I'm sorry, I can't hear a word you're saying, speak up.
Mm-hmm.
This is the remedy, that's the tonic to eliminate that piece of feedback that
Yeah.
you'll get from somebody you meet at a party or at work. So that's purely what it is. Correctly, clearly, am I articulating myself in a coherent,
Yes.
logical way?
And where do you think the most work can be done for someone who's looking to make more of an impact in terms of how they communicate?
Am I pronouncing my words clearly? Can I be heard?
Enunciation.
Yeah, can I be heard is the first port of call. So again, I'll sit in the room with a client and I might say, that's great, I lost about 4 words at the end of that paragraph. What were you trying to say? What was it there? And we'll go back over that. So it's pure sense, it's quite an old-fashioned sense of saying things clearly.
Mm.
Can I be heard? That very basic question that everybody's forgotten over the past 15 years.
Mm.
Since the advent of social, I would say, modern life encourages us not to speak well. It encourages us not to focus and listen and speak, because there are so many different avenues where you can outsource your
Yeah.
communication. I'll just put it all into WhatsApp, it's fine. I'll send a message on Instagram, it's fine. So the opportunity to speak aloud socially, and again, this could come down to perhaps you are a family who doesn't sit together having dinner.
Mm.
There's a phone on the table. The television's on all the time. The radio's on in the background. Someone's watching a podcast while it's dinner time. So these basic points of can I be heard, I really have to bring that back into the focus.
It makes me wonder what... I'm going to sound really old now. It does make me wonder what the younger generation are going to be like as communicators when they grow up.
Mm.
All those distractions, and equally, you didn't mention AI there, but AI can even do the work for you in terms of how you can
Quite right.
try and articulate a message
Quite right
as
too.
well.
Yeah.
So where is the element of thinking coming in to all of that? And then there's a question around going back to the A word, the authenticity, right? So you're operating in a space, Myles, which could be of huge value, not just for people that you're working with now, but how do you think that the younger generations are going to react to the world and how they collide with other people in the future when everything else is going on?
It's a really interesting point, and I think we all run the risk of painting a whole generation with the same brush. And I think there are certain factions where there is the opportunity to speak often and to be encouraged to speak well. And again, that could be a family just simply saying, right, it's dinner for half an hour, all sitting together, tell me about your day. No phones on the table. And it could be as simple as that. I think eliminating phones from the classroom is a basic, obvious first step for this. And I think there are still some sort of real distances between a sense of education, some elements of the state sector versus some elements of the sort of public school system. Is there the opportunity for that person to speak aloud? I mean, I went to a state school and we had debating classes that we had to do and reading aloud that we had to do. There's no join us for a debate club tomorrow after school. It would be part of the day.
Yeah.
You would be given a motion and you'd have to argue for it or against it. And you could have been against it personally, but you've got to be for it for this particular faction. So you are forced to air what you're saying. But yeah, I do worry that this basic element of speaking well and holding eye contact, how you walk into a room, do you walk in not wanting anybody to look at you? Do you want to shuffle in? Or do you want to walk in and go, right, let's see who's here? Walk in a much more vulnerable sense.
Yeah.
What am I going to attract if I walk in like this? Or do I just want to sort of slide in at the back and just disappear behind a magazine for an hour? So it is a worry. It is a worry. But I think there is a fight back against sort of too much tech in schools, for example.
Yeah.
Which I think is really suffocating this sense of natural communication. And I just hope that people do return back to reading to their children and reading aloud, reading a poem out loud, reading a lyric out loud, that sort of thing, 'cause that's what it's all about. And that's where you discover what you like and love by describing that to somebody else. That wonderful occurrence that we sometimes have when someone says to you, Dave, tell me about your favourite movie. And you'll go, this is the best. I'm going to have the greatest conversation now. So I'm going to impart something that I love passionately to somebody who may or may not have seen it. And if art is a hand-me-down, pass it on art form, there's no greater conversation for that to happen. So, and just to slightly expand that point, if I may, if I'm working with somebody and they say, oh, I'm not expressive or emotive, I'll always say, have you ever read a bedtime story to a young person, someone in your family or a friend's child? Yeah, I have. And okay, I'm sure you didn't read it. Once upon a time, there were three little bears, and one little bear woke up. And you almost go, once upon a time.
Yeah.
So you know that it's there.
It's there somewhere.
It's completely there. It just needs development and a certain sense of manipulation to turn it into something effective that that person can use on a daily basis. So to answer your question, I do worry, but I think there are certain fight backs and some easy wins that people can do. And, people do them. People do them. So I won't throw out the young generation just yet. They make it very hard not to do it. But there are some glimmers of hope there.
Something that I admire in you, Myles, just through conversation, something that you've helped me with as well in the short time that we've been working together, is the power of the pause. And you have this skill of being able to do it, not in a performative sense, but just through natural conversation. Talk to me about how important it is to pause.
There we go. Neatly done. It's hugely important. And the main thrust of that is, again, the great acceleration of modern life is someone asks you a question, you've got to jump in and answer it. Now, I don't know what I'm going to say. I need time to process the fantastic question that you've asked me. I've got to process that and think about my response. So a pause in that sense is incredibly useful for me as a strategy, because I need to consolidate my thoughts, think about how I'm going to articulate them, and then approach my answer from that particular point there. equally, it's immensely important if you're speaking in front of a room or in a conversation to use the natural grammar and punctuation that you would in any conversation. You would pause on a comma, stop on a full stop, change emphasis or topic with a new sentence or a new paragraph. We do this. But when we come to public speaking engagements, that sometimes goes on the back burner and we speak in incredibly long sentences and then wonder why we run out of breath at the end of paragraph 4, gasping to get to the next bit. Your audience needs time to process what you're saying as well, especially if it's something quite profound or of a certain interest. Now with you, Dave, with what you do in your job, you would have discovered a ton of insights and education and strategy that are probably second nature to you now. You will then deliver this out to a room. One of your sentences, one of your pieces of insight that you worked out 5-6 years ago, which is just part of your DNA now, is going to change my life in the audience. So if you to gloss over that, does your own sense of study and education a massive disservice. Let it sit with the room, let them absorb it, and then we can come with you. If I'm packing a sentence full of words, I'm just going to stop listening. I can't cope with that level of verbal onslaught, and I'll just switch off.
Yeah.
And therefore I'll just be smiling and nodding, but nothing will be going in. So therefore you're working really hard, but you're just speaking to a brick wall at the moment because I can't absorb any more of what you've said. I will rejoin you once you change topic because I can start again with you. But I won't seek to catch up. So a pause is incredibly important. There's so much authority to be garnered from shutting up and just not saying anything. And stopping the sound is so much more tricky than starting the sound.
Why is that? Why do we struggle so much with the pause, do you think? Because
I think people are under the mass illusion that the more they speak, the more intelligent they appear. Now, if you've answered the question, throw that full stop in. Because if you don't, what normally happens is you say the same thought with 6 different variations and you'll keep talking. And I've got it. I've got what you said. Yeah. I understood it. Don't treat me like a moron. I understand what you're saying. If I didn't, I will ask you to give me another alternative. Now, another strategy there is if you're speaking to people, you might say your piece of insight. You might then say, or in other words, and then bring a more sort of watered down version of what you just said, and then move on. If someone still doesn't get it and they're engaged in you, they will feel empowered to go, actually, Dave, could you just go back over what you just said? I think it was really interesting, but just to solidify and concrete my understanding, can you just give me that again? And of course you'll do that because you know your subject.
I think I may have mentioned to you before, Myles, I had a habit, still do, that I'm trying to work on, is to ask, almost validate what I've said. Yeah. Or worse, do you follow me?
Yeah. Yes. No one's ever going to say no.
You know? But we tend to pick up these habits. How do we purposefully get rid of those habits? Is it, again, just practicing out loud, or have you got any advice for anyone who's carrying filler words, ums, ahs, okays, do you follow me's?
So those anomalies, so the filler words and then the affirmation, okay, do I make sense? Is that clear? Do you understand? It's usually because you're just throwing yourself into a sentence far too quickly. Take a moment, let the stage settle, then start the sound.
Yeah.
Start when you're ready is a really, really big aspect of speech in general. And I know we looked at this in our first session, you and I. I don't think you're ready. Start again. I know you're not ready. Start that again. I know you're just doing it because you think, oh, I can't stand here for another 5 more seconds. It's going to be a complete waste of time. If you're not ready to start, don't start. It's your speech. You dictate the tempo. You are in charge. You're the expert in the room. You start when you're ready. And it's very telling when someone has started when they're not ready, because they'll usually start with okay, so, right, okay, and I'll go along for about 30 seconds spouting out nothing. What a waste of energy. If you were to see that transcript, that's a great thing about AI now. You can see the transcripts of your calls.
Yeah.
You think, what the hell was I saying there? What's this? That doesn't read. If I were to submit that to be a play, no one's going to read that dialogue, because it doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
So, again, it can come from a point of attacking the sound too early, but perhaps you just not being as secure in your thoughts and your insights as perhaps you should be, or you've given yourself the opportunity to be. So I might say, what do you actually want to say here? This all sounds lovely, but what do you actually want to say? Oh, I want to say that if you do a project this way, you're going to save yourself £5,000.
Yeah.
Okay, start with that. That's pure you. When I force that question, that very exposing, direct question, what are you actually trying to say? Oh, I'm trying to say, you'll either give the response that you want to give, or you'll say, I'm not sure. And I'll go, great, well, there hangs the problem. Let's go back 2 steps. Let's look at what this exercise is all about and try and find what it is, what you want to say. If you're treading water on nothingness, then that's all I'm going to get. Politicians do it all the time. You know, gosh, I think back to when you used to see Kamala Harris talk about things. You think, what on earth is? That's just a list of words. I don't know what this is.
Have you ever worked with any politicians, or would you?
Of course I would. I'd work with anybody. Yeah. No, I haven't as yet. I will leave it as that. I haven't as yet. I've had a few sort of conversations, but yeah. Of course I would work with them. I'd like to just sort of cut out the bluster. Humans react to humans.
Yeah.
You know, it's tell me what you want to say. We are very savvy these days, more than I think some Westminster bubbly people realise. We go, you know, we're not idiots.
Yeah.
Just tell me what this is, or don't give me some sort of vague response or a fluffy, very well stitched political response that actually doesn't really say anything or move the conversation along. So yes, I would completely work with an MP.
I'm sure you do an amazing job with them.
Thank you, Dave.
I wanted to ask you about, maybe I'd call it a mindset or a status that you introduced me to. Happy high status came up in our first session, which I've been thinking about actually over the past 2 weeks.
Good.
What does that mean to you, Myles, and for the people listening? What is it?
So, status levels generally change throughout your day. So you could be feeling high status, or you could be feeling low status, depending on where you are. And if you think 10 is high status, 10 is a king, a president, a CEO, a whatever, bank manager. 1 is the most timid person known to man. The great thing about status is only you know how you're feeling. I can give some vague observations, but only you know how you're feeling deep down. Only you do. Now we can take some elements from the high status person, which could help us if you're feeling quite nervous or timid. So the high status person holds themselves very securely. They operate in a big sphere. They don't operate in a small space. They speak in very short sentences. They'll never repeat themselves because they know that you're listening. They'll maintain eye contact and really maintain it to a point of awkwardness from another person where you think, I've got to break this very quickly because I feel a bit awkward here. So we can take some elements from that. But for you to act just high status is probably too performative for you to wear as a strategy. So I soften it slightly with happy high status. The happy high status person is really, really pleased and excited to be standing in front of a room ready to tell their story, because they are so invested in this insight, they're so invested in this narrative, they cannot wait to impart it onto the room. The happy high status person is a vulnerable person. Points of vulnerability is where good stories come from. Because you're out there in front of the room, you've accepted that is your fate, and you're going to take it by the scruff of the neck and think, great, I can't wait to tell this person about my favourite film. It's exactly that sentiment. So it's an improvisation technique by a practitioner called Keith Johnston. And it's so effective. I found it really helped me when I was starting out and going through study. I thought, this makes sense now.
What would be a practical intervention that someone could do if they were feeling in low status mode before a conversation or before a presentation or before a social situation? How can you advise people on shifting that status?
Very simply by adjusting their posture. So it could be, the nervous person is usually feeling incredibly tense because they want to get out of the room. Nothing feels very settled. That's why their eye contact is a bit jerky and breaks off very, very swiftly. And they want to get out of the room. If we can remove that sense of tension from their shoulders, for example, and we would have done this in our very first session, remove a sense of tension, hold yourself better, put your shoulders in the back pockets, nice open chest, embrace the situation. Your eye contact, your default focus will lift, and therefore outwardly your status level would have shifted. Now inwardly you might still be feeling nervous, and that's fine, because sometimes if we're outwardly portraying a higher status than what we're feeling internally, our internal will sometimes meet our outward projection, what we're telegraphing. Almost fool yourself. Make believe you're brave and the trick will get you far. You may be as brave as you make believe you are. That, to quote The King and I, this sense is what it's all about. You can flip your status like that. So simply. Just by changing. And as simple as it is. Okay, it's easy to access that. Super easy to access. And you might be thinking, I still feel incredibly nervous. I'm thinking, we can deal with that, but you're about to go on to speak to this room of 10 people about this great project you did. Let's just embrace it from the outwardly posture and hold yourself in a much better way. Your poise has changed. The room is then going to think, great, this person seems to know what they're talking about. They're owning the space anyway. They'll respond better to that rather than the person shuffling out going, hi, so stay here. It's all very insular and closed. It's pushing it out there. So that's a very simple technique that somebody could do just before they step out the front door, walk into their office, step out on stage, before they jump on the Zoom call. These techniques will just fool yourself. And then you can start to embrace what that feels like, because the nervous person will just live in a very small world. For me to rip them out of that world is incredibly exposing. But once you're there, out of your comfort zone could be another way of thinking about that. Once you're there, we can start to explore and go, okay, right, so how's this feel? Unnatural is usually the first port of call. And I'll go, okay, great, different is good. We wouldn't be working together if you didn't want to embrace a sense of difference. I would never be working with you. We would never meet. So we've got to accept that different is good. And a peculiar sense of how you're holding yourself and speaking is good as well, because we're just looking at different arenas and areas of what you want to do. If this is still painful and you're not happy with it, then perhaps we need to revisit at a later time, or look at some different strategies, or just curb our thinking. And it's interesting, with that level, I don't tend to work with people so much these days who come to me and say, I've got a presentation next week and I'm so nervous about it, when you can help me with that. Of course I could help them with it, but the more substantial sense of our working relationship is look at things in the long term and not just hone in on the A game, which is their corporate speech, and the B game is their social speech. Both of these things have to be affected. It can't be, this is how I speak at work, this is how I speak at home. They've got to be as aligned as they can be. Okay, they might not ever be on the same level, but they can be closer. The bedfellows they didn't be in separate rooms. They can still be in the same room, in the same bed. It's much grander when that happens because it's easier to wear. And then it becomes part of your daily routine. You'll think, okay, I'm going to walk down the street with my shoulders in my back pocket and just see how that feels like. Rather than make it I'm doing work now, I'm going to go into work posture. Doesn't quite work like that.
No. That's something that personally, I mean, I stepped out of the corporate world just over 12 months ago now. And I think it's something that a lot of people struggle with in the corporate world, that sense of I am now having to put my mask on, metaphorically, and physically put my suit on and become an individual for 8 hours and then get home and then release and go back to my real authentic self. I think it's rife, I would say, in the corporate world, right?
I think you're right. And I know people say, make sure it's the real you that comes to work every day. And I'll go, well, I'm feeling a bit grumpy this morning. I don't want to take this to work. I don't want to change. I want to maybe inhabit a much more useful person. I want to be a more pleasant individual than what's going on. So I completely get not bringing everything into work. I completely get that sense. But there's perhaps a better way just to look at it and just think, okay, right, what is going on today? Why am I chairing this meeting? Why am I doing this presentation? Why? Answer questions in a much more human way. And the answer that you're going to force yourself to give is a much more Dave-like response to that question. And therefore, you'll be able to tackle that particular challenge of the day with a bit more gusto, I would say, or a bit more Dave-like gusto.
Yes.
So, it's an interesting one, the sort of corporate social world and what that mixture is and how much of the, and it's very sort of HR-y to say, bring the real you to work and think, no, I don't want to. I don't like these people. I don't want to see real me.
Myles, I've absolutely loved this conversation.
Oh, likewise.
I am conscious of your energy levels because we've got a coaching session after this. So
looking forward to it.
I'm going to thank you for your time. I can't wait to carry on working with you, mate, and I just appreciate your energy that you've brought to this conversation.
You're very sweet. Thank you very much. I really enjoyed it. Thank you so much for having me.
Perfect. Thank you, Myles.